I'm Laura. I'm 34 years old, and 2 years ago I walked out of my parents' house on Thanksgiving and didn't look back. People always ask why I don't go home for the holidays, and I usually say something polite like, "We're not very close." That's the surface version. The real version is messier, darker, and harder for most people to believe. But this story didn't start the night I walked away. It started long before that, years of tiny cuts, quiet humiliations, and a family who convinced themselves I was the problem, not them. Still, that Thanksgiving, I had convinced myself things might finally be different. 3 days before the holiday, my sister Danielle messaged me out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in months. Her opening line was, "Mom's been emotional lately. She wants all of us together this year." Then she added that Dad had been talking about rebuilding the family. It sounded rehearsed. But she said they missed me. She even said Mom had been crying about how distant things had become. I should have questioned it. But I'm human, and part of me still wanted to believe I mattered to them. So I said I'd come, and I offered to bring dessert, my homemade pumpkin pie, the one I'd perfected after years of trial and error. Baking had become a kind of therapy, something I could control when everything else felt chaotic. I made the entire thing from scratch: roasted pumpkin, flaky crust, spiced filling, the kind of pie you'd see in a magazine spread. I wanted to show them I had built a life, that I was more than the screw-up they'd always painted me as. I drove 3 hours with that pie, sitting carefully on a blanket in the passenger seat. I remember glancing over at it at stoplights, feeling hopeful, maybe stupidly hopeful. Their house looked exactly the same when I arrived. Faded shutters, sagging porch swing, the same crooked wind chime that had annoyed me since childhood. But as soon as I walked up the steps, I heard laughter inside. Not warm laughter, sharp, cutting laughter. A warning I didn't recognize in time. Danielle opened the door, looked shocked to see me, as if she hadn't invited me, and took the pie from my hands without a hello. I followed her into the kitchen. Mom was pulling the turkey out of the oven. She glanced at the pie box, made a face like she smelled something rotten, then looked right at me. Her first words weren't "Hi," or "Happy Thanksgiving," or even "Thanks for coming." No, they were, "Oh God, she's trying to poison us now since she can't succeed any other way." Just like that. Cold, flat, casual cruelty she didn't even blink over. Dad walked in behind her, took one look at the pie, and chuckled. Probably used expired ingredients from the food bank. The table erupted in laughter. My siblings, my aunt, my cousins. The kind of laughter that isn't spontaneous, but expected. Like they'd been waiting for this moment. Like they'd rehearsed it. I stood there holding my own jacket like a shield, suddenly 12 years old again, suddenly back in every moment where they'd made me feel small and ridiculous and inconvenient. Danielle pulled out her phone. She lifted it. Let it hover toward me. "Smile, Laura. Family memories." There was a red recording dot on her screen. The humiliation rushed up my throat so fast I thought I would choke. I looked at the pie I'd made with my own hands, sitting on the counter like a joke they'd set up. I didn't say a word. Not one. I set my keys on the counter to grab my purse, then changed my mind. I picked them back up, turned around, and walked out. No goodbyes. No explanations. No confrontation. Just gone. I drove the 3 hours home without turning on the radio, without crying, without thinking. I just gripped the wheel and kept going, like if I slowed down for a second, the past 30 minutes would crush me. That night, sitting alone on my couch, I realized something quietly terrifying. They hadn't invited me to reconnect. They'd invited me to perform my role. The scapegoat. The punchline. The family failure. And I had refused to play along. That should have been the end of it. It should have ended the moment I blocked all their numbers. But 2 years later, 2 full years of silence, therapy, rebuilding, and finally feeling free, I woke up to the sound of fists pounding on my windows, every window, every wall. Voices shouting my name, demanding I open up, screaming that I had ruined everything. And the moment I walked into the living room and saw shadows moving behind the curtains, I understood. My family wasn't done with me. Not even close. And whatever they wanted now, It wasn't an apology. It was something far, far worse. I didn't move at first. When you wake up to the sound of fists hammering every window of your home, your brain doesn't process it as reality. It felt like a dream, one of those nightmares where your body won't respond, no matter how loudly your instincts scream. But the voices were too real. Too familiar. "Laura, open the door. We know you're in there. Stop hiding, we need to talk." My heart kicked into a sprint. I crept to the hallway, pressing myself against the wall as shadows passed across the curtains. There were multiple silhouettes, moving frantically, like they were circling the house. I forced myself toward the living room window and peeked through the smallest slit in the curtain. It was my parents. Both of them. At 6:40 inches the morning. Dad was pounding on the living room window with the side of his fist. Mom was banging on the kitchen window with an open palm, shouting my name like someone being dragged into traffic. 2 years of silence. 2 years of rebuilding myself. 2 years of carefully guarding my peace. And now this. My first thought wasn't fear. It was anger. Hot, rising, overpowering. But the second thought, the one that chilled me, was, how did they find me? I moved away from the window before they could see movement. My phone was buzzing on my nightstand. Unknown numbers. Multiple missed calls. Multiple voicemails. Then, Danielle. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Finally, a text buzzed through. "Answer the door. This is serious." I stared at the message for a long moment. Danielle never used words like serious unless it was about them, never about me. The banging grew louder. More urgent. I walked to the door but didn't open it. I spoke through the lock. "What do you want?" Mom's voice, sharp and trembling. "Laura, open this door right now. We need to talk in person." "No," I said. "Say it from there." Dad's fist slammed against the door so hard the wood rattled. "Enough with the attitude. We drove 3 hours. Open it." I felt that old, familiar tightening in my chest, the one I used to feel every time Dad yelled when I was a kid. But I wasn't a kid now. "Tell me why you're here," I repeated, stronger this time. There was a pause. A long one. Then Mom spoke softly. Too softly. "Your brother Mark is gone." My stomach dropped. "Gone?" I asked. "What do you mean gone?" Another pause. Dad answered. He emptied his accounts, left a note, and disappeared. I froze. Mark? The golden child? The son who could do no wrong? The one whose footsteps every other sibling was supposed to follow? "What does that have to do with me?" I asked. Dad's voice sharpened again. "He told people you influenced him, that you filled his head with ideas." My blood ran cold. "I haven't spoken to Mark in 3 years," I said, "since before Thanksgiving." Dad snorted. "And you expect us to believe that?" I could hear the contempt dripping from his voice, the same tone he used when I was a child and dared to defend myself. Mom's palm slapped the door. "Open this door now, if you care about this family at all." I cut her off. "I'm calling the police." The banging stopped instantly, like a switch flipped. Mom's voice turned icy. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh," I said, "I absolutely would." I reached for my phone and began dialing. I didn't need to bluff. As soon as the dispatcher picked up, I gave my address and said, "My parents are trying to force their way into my home." Dad muttered something, low and furious. Mom gasped. Then, just like that, their footsteps retreated down the driveway. Silence. I stayed frozen by the door until the police arrived. I explained everything, truthfully, calmly, shaken but composed. They took a statement, told me I had every right to file a harassment complaint, and advised me not to open the door if they returned. But the moment the officers left, my phone exploded again. Danielle. Mark's wife, Jenna. My aunt. Cousins. Unknown numbers. All with variations of the same accusation. "What did you say to him?" "What did you do?" "This is your fault." I sat on my couch feeling like someone had knocked the air out of me. Their words, sharp, coordinated, brought back something I thought I'd buried after that Thanksgiving. That familiar script. That familiar role. The family scapegoat. the one to blame when anything goes wrong, the one who must have caused the chaos. But this time, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going back. Not to the family. Not to the role. And definitely not to whatever they were planning next. Because deep down, I knew something. They hadn't come to my house because they were scared for Mark. They had come because they needed someone to pin him on. And I was the easiest target. But they had no idea how much I'd changed in 2 years. And they had no idea what I had kept, quietly, carefully, intentionally, that could turn everything around. Something they had forgotten about. Something they never expected me to use. And it had Mark's name written all over it. I didn't leave my couch for almost an hour after the police drove away. Not because I was scared, though there was some of that, but because everything felt surreal. 2 years of silence. Then suddenly my entire family was banging on my windows at sunrise because my brother Mark had vanished. The more I replayed their words, the clearer it became. They weren't looking for Mark. They were looking for someone to blame. And blaming me was as natural to them as breathing. Eventually, I forced myself up, made coffee with shaky hands, and opened my laptop. If Mark had really disappeared, it would be online. My family wasn't the type to keep drama quiet. I didn't even have to search long. There it was. A local news article posted just 3 hours earlier. Local accountant missing after leaving disturbing note. My hands went cold. I clicked. Mark's photo stared back at me, clean cut, smiling, wearing the exact expression our parents always wished I'd imitate. The article said he'd drained his personal savings, packed a single duffel bag, and left a handwritten note saying he needed freedom and distance from certain people. Police were calling it a voluntary disappearance, no foul play suspected. No mention of me. But Dad claimed Mark had told people I influenced him. Dad loved twisting facts until reality bent to his preferred version. Still, something else didn't sit right. Mark leaving? Walking away from the golden pedestal our parents kept him on? That didn't match the brother I'd grown up with. I scrolled further, and then I saw it. Coworkers reported the man had been under stress due to financial discrepancies discovered during a recent audit. Financial discrepancies. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to Mark in years, but I knew one thing. He was meticulous with money, neurotic even, the kind of person who balanced his checkbook every Sunday morning. Something wasn't adding up. I opened the second article linked underneath the first. It was shorter, quoting an unnamed coworker who claimed Mark had panicked after learning he might be investigated. Investigated? For what? I closed the browser. The room felt too quiet. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message. From an unknown number, but the writing was unmistakable. Danielle, you need to tell the police whatever you told him. This is spiraling because of you. I exhaled, long and slow. There it was, the script. The one they always pulled out when they needed a villain. I should have blocked her. Instead, I typed, I haven't spoken to Mark in 3 years. A few seconds later, that's not what he said. My fingers tightened around the phone. What exactly did he say? No response. Not a single word. I tossed the phone onto the couch and stood up. I knew where the answers were, not in text messages or articles or whatever twisted story my parents were rehearsing. The answers were in the thing they never expected I still had. Mark's old box. 2 years ago, on the night I walked out of Thanksgiving, I didn't just leave the pie behind. I left a piece of myself behind too. But a week later, Mark had shown up at my apartment unannounced. He didn't come inside. He just handed me a cardboard box and said, Mom wants to throw this out. Thought maybe you'd want it. Then he left before I could ask questions. I'd put the box in the back of my closet and never opened it. Until now. I pulled it down, sat on the floor, and tore the tape. Dust rose into the air. Inside were old birthday cards, a middle school yearbook, a ceramic mug I'd painted as a kid, and a folder. A thick, overstuffed folder labeled in Mark's neat handwriting. Private. My pulse quickened. I opened it. Inside were pages and pages of spreadsheets, bank statements, screenshots, emails, months' worth of financial records, all marked up in red pen, all referencing the same thing. My parents' finances. I froze. Why would Mark have this? I flipped through the pages, scanning quickly, trying to make sense of it. The further I went, the clearer it became. Mark had been tracking them. Not casually. Not accidentally. Deliberately. Their credit card statements. Their joint accounts. Their home equity line. Dozens of unexplained withdrawals. Thousands of dollars moved around with no pattern. And then, near the back of the folder, one page was circled in red several times. A line item dated 18 months ago. $42,500, cashier's check, withdrawn by mom. My breath caught in my throat. $42,500. Gone. And next to it, in Mark's handwriting, she said this was for Laura. Not true. My chest tightened. I flipped to the next page. Another note. Dad told me she repaid a loan to Laura. Doesn't match any real accounts. My vision blurred. A loan? To me? I kept reading. More notes. More red circles. More entries that didn't make sense. And then, the last page stopped everything inside me. Mark's handwriting again, shaky this time. If they find out what I know, it won't be me they blame. It'll be her. Her. Me. I sat there on the floor, the folder open in my lap, realization hitting me like an avalanche. My family wasn't banging on my windows because they thought I influenced Mark. They were banging on my windows because they believed Mark left his mess behind and pinned it on me. And whether it was true or not, I was now the easiest, most convenient scapegoat. And my parents? They weren't here for the truth. They were here for protection. Because if Mark had uncovered something real, something illegal, my family wasn't just looking for someone to blame. They were looking for someone to sacrifice. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor until sunrise, with Mark's folder spread around me like a crime scene. Every page felt heavier than the last. The numbers weren't random. They were deliberate. Withdrawals clustered around odd dates. Transfers between accounts that my parents shouldn't have had access to. And that $42,500, missing, mislabeled, and pinned to my name, was the kind of thing that could ruin someone. Or frame someone. By the time the morning light slid through the blinds, one thought kept repeating in my head. Mark didn't disappear because he was running from his own mistakes. He disappeared because he'd discovered everyone else's. My phone buzzed again. A new voicemail. From Jenna. His wife. I pressed play. Jenna's voice sounded exhausted, thin. Laura, I don't know what they told you, but Mark wasn't well. He thought someone was watching him. He thought your parents were hiding things. He talked about confronting them after the audit at work. I thought he was overthinking things like he always does. But now? I don't know. If you know anything, please call me. She hung up without saying goodbye. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at my phone. Jenna wasn't dramatic. She wasn't manipulative like my family. She said only what she believed to be true. If she was confused, if she was scared, then something was seriously wrong. I went back to the folder, flipping through the pages again. And then I noticed something I'd missed. A second folder, flat, black, almost invisible at the bottom of the box. I pulled it out. Inside were printed emails between Mark and his company's internal auditor. The subject lines made my skin crawl. Irregular parent account activity. Unauthorized transfers. Possible embezzlement? I read the emails one by one, my heart pounding harder with each line. Mark had been auditing my parents. Not because he wanted to. Because someone, probably a bank or lender, had flagged something suspicious. One email from the auditor stood out. These transfers appear to be intentionally concealed. If this ties back to your family, recuse yourself immediately. I let out a long breath. Mark didn't recuse himself. He kept digging. And the deeper he dug, the more their financial mess spilled into my name. I closed the folder and pressed my palms into my eyes. A wave of nausea rolled through me. If Mark had been investigating them, and they found out, if any of them thought he'd talk to me, if they thought his disappearance made me the loose end, suddenly the banging on my windows that morning made horrible sense. My family wasn't confused. They weren't grieving. They weren't scared for Mark. They were scared for themselves, and they were trying to control the story before the truth came out. I needed to think. I needed someone neutral. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Detective Harris. He wasn't a close friend, not exactly, but 2 years ago, when I went no contact, he was the one who handled the harassment report after my parents kept showing up at my old apartment. He'd been calm, straightforward, not swayed by emotional theatrics. When he picked up, I almost hung up out of nerves. "Laura, everything all right?" "No," I said. "Something's wrong. My brother's missing." I explained the banging on my windows, the accusations, the note he'd left, the news articles, and finally, the folders. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "Those documents, are you absolutely sure they're authentic?" "Yes," I said. "It's all Mark's handwriting, his files." "And the withdrawals tied to your name?" "Yes." There was a pause on the line. "Laura, listen to me very carefully," he said. "Do not contact your parents again. Do not open your door to them, and don't tell them you have those documents." The hairs on my arms rose. "Why? Do you think they're dangerous?" "I think," he said, choosing each word, "that your brother may have uncovered something he wasn't supposed to. And if your name is attached to those transactions, you're not just the family scapegoat anymore." I swallowed hard. "What am I then?" He didn't hesitate. "A liability, and possibly a witness." My heart thudded against my ribs. "Detective, what do I do?" "Bring the documents to the station, today. Don't email them. Don't text photos. Bring the originals. And Laura, be careful. If they came to your house this morning, they might come back." After we hung up, I sat there gripping my phone, trying to calm my breathing. A witness. A liability. The family scapegoat had become something else, something they couldn't control. I packed the folders into a backpack, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. My hand froze on the knob when I heard footsteps outside. Slow. Deliberate. Too close. Then a voice. Dad's voice. Barely above a whisper. "Laura, we know you're still inside. We need those papers. Open up." My heart stopped. They knew. Somehow, they knew. I froze with my hand still on the doorknob. Dad's voice wasn't angry this time. It wasn't mocking or loud. It was worse, measured, controlled, the tone he used right before something irreversible happened. "Laura," he said again, calmer than I'd heard him in years, "we just want to talk." My pulse hammered in my ears. My mind scrambled through every possibility. Had someone seen the folders through a window? Did they break in yesterday when I wasn't home? Did Mark tell them something before disappearing? I stepped back from the door as quietly as possible. Mom's voice joined his, soft but trembling. "We know you found what Mark left. We need to explain." Explain. That was new. My mother never explained anything in her life. Another shadow moved under the doorframe. Danielle. I recognized her voice instantly. "Laura, please. If the police get those files, it'll destroy everything. Everything." There it was. Not concern for Mark. Not remorse. Not fear for me. Fear of consequences. I took a slow breath, forcing my voice steady. "What files? What are you talking about?" Silence. Then Dad spoke, sharp and cold again. "Don't play games. We know Mark gave you copies." Copies. So the originals weren't in the box. My heart sank. I stayed quiet long enough that I heard Dad shift his weight, pacing. "Open this door," he said. "We're not leaving until you do." I backed up and grabbed my phone, dialing Detective Harris's direct line. It rang twice before his voice came through. "Laura?" "They're here," I whispered. "Outside my door." He didn't hesitate. "Do not open it. I'm sending a unit now. Stay away from the windows." I hung up, stepped back into the hallway, and locked myself in the bathroom. Not because the door was stronger, but because it was the only room without big windows they could peer into. Outside, the banging started again, harder, more frantic. "Laura!" Mom shouted. "If you think the police will protect you, you're wrong." Danielle's voice cut in sharply. "You don't understand what you're doing. This isn't just about you." Dad slammed his fist against the door. "You think we won't defend ourselves? You think you can ruin us?" I clutched the backpack with the folders tight against my chest and sat on the floor, knees pulled close. I kept listening for the sound of glass breaking, because that tone in Dad's voice wasn't an empty threat. Minutes crawled by like hours. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance. The banging stopped instantly. Murmurs. Footsteps retreating. Then silence. I didn't move until a knock sounded. 3 short taps, 1 long. The pattern Detective Harris told me his units would use. "Police," a voice called. "You can open the door." I stepped out of the bathroom on shaky legs, crossed the living room, and cracked the door. 2 uniformed officers and Harris himself stood there. My parents were gone. Danielle, too. "They left as soon as we pulled up," one officer said. "Did they try to break in?" Harris asked. "No," I said, "but they knew about the documents. I don't know how." Harris nodded, jaw tightening. "Let's go. Bring everything. We'll talk at the station." I didn't argue. The drive there felt unreal. I kept expecting my parents' car to appear behind me, or for Danielle to call again. The folders sat in the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. At the station, Harris guided me to a small interview room. He didn't turn on the recorder, not yet. "Before we proceed formally," he said, "I need to understand one thing clearly. Did you know your parents were under investigation?" My stomach dropped. "Under investigation? For what?" He sighed. 2 months ago, a financial institution flagged suspicious activity on an account tied to them. A preliminary inquiry was opened. Your brother was contacted because his name appeared in connection with the withdrawal patterns. The room felt suddenly too small. "So Mark was telling the truth," I whispered. "Yes," Harris said, "and based on what I've seen so far, his disappearance is starting to look less voluntary." A wave of nausea hit me. "They're trying to frame me," I said. "Aren't they?" Harris didn't sugarcoat it. "Someone is, and your parents are acting like people who are desperate. Desperate people make dangerous decisions." I swallowed hard. "I never touched their accounts. I never took anything from them. You believe that, right?" "Laura," he said gently, "every piece of evidence you brought today supports your innocence. But right now, your family is spinning a narrative. If they can discredit you, if they can make you the unstable one, the liar, the problem, then everything points away from them." I thought about Thanksgiving. The poisoned pie comment. The mocking. The coordinated cruelty. The recording. They'd always treated me like the scapegoat. But now, it wasn't just emotional abuse. It was strategy. "What happens next?" I asked. Harris leaned forward. "We protect you. We secure the documents. And we find out what really happened to your brother." He paused. "But Laura, prepare yourself. If your parents are involved, they won't go down quietly, and you may need to testify. Testify. Against my own family." I felt the weight of that word settle deep into my chest. I thought I'd left them behind 2 years ago. I thought walking out of that Thanksgiving dinner was the end. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And the truth, whatever it was about to drag all of us into a place none of us could escape. I didn't go home that night. The police insisted I stay in a safe hotel, one with interior hallways and security cameras. I didn't argue. My hands still shook from the confrontation, from hearing Dad's voice through my door, from the sudden knowledge that Mark hadn't been imagining things. He had been right. And he had been in danger. Harris met me at the station early the next morning. The folders lay spread across a long table, the evidence now properly photographed and logged. He motioned for me to sit. "We traced the $42,500 withdrawal," he said. "It didn't go to you. It didn't go to any known bill or investment." I braced myself. "It went to a private gambling debt," he finished. "Your father's." The air left my lungs. "Dad doesn't gamble," I said softly. But even as the words left my mouth, I remembered things. Late-night drives, whispered arguments behind closed doors, Mom crying quietly while pretending she had allergies. Yes, he did gamble. He always had. Harris continued, "And it gets worse. Your mother used another $18,000 from the joint account to cover a second debt. Both were pulled under your name. Mark figured it out months ago." My mind spun. So Mark was protecting me? "Yes," he said. "At first. But when he confronted them, things escalated. They panicked. They blamed him for digging, for involving his company's audit department, for creating a paper trail." I felt a dull ache build behind my ribs. "So what happened to him?" I whispered. Harris didn't answer immediately. He turned a page in the file, then slid it toward me. A screenshot. A final message Mark sent to his coworker the night before he disappeared. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. My parents know what I found." My throat tightened. "And then what?" I asked. "Then," Harris said, "he bought a bus ticket, alone, to another state. He used cash the whole way. He checked into a motel under a fake name." "Is he alive?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "Yes," Harris said. "We found him." I covered my mouth with both hands. For a moment, the world tilted. Mark, alive, hidden, running but breathing. "Where is he?" "He doesn't want contact yet," Harris said gently. "He asked us to relay that he's safe. He'll talk to you when he's ready." Tears stung my eyes. Relief and heartbreak tangled together in a knot I couldn't separate. "But Laura," Harris added, "he told us something else. Something important." I waited. "He said your parents fully intended to blame you for the missing funds if the investigation reached them. They'd been planning it for months. The story they told you at your door, they rehearsed it." A single tear slipped down my cheek. Of course they had. I'd always been the easiest one to blame. "What happens now?" I asked. Harris folded his hands. "Your parents are being brought in for questioning today. After that, likely, charges, fraud, embezzlement, obstruction. And because they showed up at your home, potentially harassment or trespassing." I nodded slowly. "And me?" "You," he said, "need to rebuild your life, again. But this time, without them hovering over you." He stood, gathering the evidence. "Oh, and one more thing," he added. "Your parents tried to access your bank account last week. We found the attempted login during a digital trace." I closed my eyes. They were going to frame me financially, too. Yes. I let the truth settle, heavy but clarifying. The years of belittling, the poisoned pie comment, the laughter, the accusations, the certainty that I was the problem. It had all been part of the same story. A story where I existed only to absorb blame. But Mark had seen it. He'd tried to protect me. And it had nearly destroyed him. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name and handwriting I knew better than my own. Mark. I opened it carefully. "I'm sorry," the letter began. "I should have come to you sooner. I should have warned you. Everything you found, I knew they would use it against you. They always used you. I left because I couldn't save both of us. I'm trying to put myself back together. I'll reach out again when I'm stronger. I hope one day we can talk." I pressed the letter to my chest and cried harder than I had in years. Not from grief. Not from fear. From finally being seen. From being believed. When my parents were arrested, extended family tried calling. I ignored all of them. Some wanted gossip. Some wanted explanations. Some wanted to shame me. I didn't owe them any answers. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone anything. I think about that Thanksgiving sometimes. The pie sitting on the counter. Their laughter. The humiliation. And now I see the truth. They weren't mocking my pie. They were mocking my existence. The ease with which they believed I could poison them said everything about how they saw me. Not as a daughter. As a threat. A liability. A convenient scapegoat. But the thing about scapegoats is this. Eventually, they learn to stand up. Eventually, they stop absorbing the sins of others. Eventually, they walk away for good. And once they do, the whole system falls apart. So this is my ending. My parents are facing charges. My brother is safe. I am free. And the cycle ends with me.